is now time for the Soulful Psalm segment of Beacon of Truth. And in this iteration of the Soulful Psalm, since we've gone through all 150 Psalms in the past 2 years, what we're doing this year is that we are looking at the Psalms within the context of the readings within the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And since today is Word of God Wednesday, we're going to take a look at the Psalm that is in between the different readings. So the first reading is from Isaiah. This is what's called he has the suffering servant, which is later, like Isaiah 50, 51, 52, 53. But here he's just talking about his servant. He said, the Lord said to me, you are my servant, right? Ebed in Hebrew is servant. Who is he talking about? Israel. Right? Through whom I show my glory. Right? So that's the whole thing. God came to the Israelites and said, you are going to be the people who are going to witness to all the other nations, all the other tribes, all the other peoples. I've chosen you to be my witnesses to the rest of the world. Right? And so we're talking about that today. So we see that a clear parallel with the Gospels, John the Baptist pointing and directing people to Jesus, God using him as the instrument in which is going to help bring people to Jesus. So in the Old Testament, he says, you are my servant through whom I show my glory. Israel, you are the ones that God has chosen to direct people to me, to bring people to my heart, to have people encounter the life of God through the people of Israel. And I love this, who formed me as his servant from the womb. So again, all these people that say, well, it's not really a person until it starts to think, and it's not really a person until it takes a breath, and all this other foolishness, we go back to the word of God. We see in Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, Yavdah, I experienced you. And here in Isaiah, we're talking about God's servant who was formed from the servant from the womb. He was the servant. That means that God had already designated this person to be his servant from the womb. So we see that God has a plan for us from the moment of our conception, that our life is not me. So the trick is, how do we then discover what that is? God has a plan. We see it here in Isaiah. He has a plan. We are his servants from the womb. God knows what that plan is. We don't. Right? So we spend the first, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years even, trying to, figure, what do we call it now? They say, what's your son doing? Or what's your daughter? Well, they're still trying to figure it out. Right? In other words, they're still trying to discover their purpose. What is my purpose for being here? What is the plan that God has for my life? Right? So I love that. And then of course we have the gospel, which we're going to talk about in the next part of the show. But then we have the Psalm, right? Which is Psalm 40. So Psalm 40 is written by David, Psalms 1 to 41 in book 1 of the Psalms, all those Psalms attributed to David. And it says, here I am, Lord, the refrain for the Psalm. Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will. Right? So again, we're talking about discovering our purpose for being here. And here's that Psalm that nails it right on the head. And I love this Psalm. I waited. Now, again, I'm going to use the version, the NAB, New American Bible version of the Psalm that's here instead of using the Hebrew text. So it says, I waited for the Lord, and he stooped toward me. He heard my cry. And in the Hebrew, it says he stooped down to me, right? So that divine condescension, how God, from on high comes down to our level. Why? He wants to experience us. He wants to touch us. He wants to love us, and he wants to do that in a personal way, right? So that's why he sent, in the Old Testament, he sent the prophets, right? He sent the people to lead the people to him. He put he put a new song into my mouth, a hymn to our God. So again, we sing his glory and his praises by how we witness to the power of his love.
For more on the Psalms with Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, check out Beacon of Truth weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio and streaming everywhere you listen to podcasts.